Hello, everyone. It's really nice to be here tonight. Let me start by saying that as a Peace Corps volunteer, I need to let you know that everything that I say tonight is my own observations, my own opinions, and in no way reflects the policy of the Peace Corps or of the United States government. Let me give you a little bit of history about Peace Corps to begin with. It is a branch of the United States government, and it was established in 1962 by John F. Kennedy. And it was his goal, his mission, to establish Peace Corps to promote world friendship and community development through intercultural understanding. And so since 1962, we have been serving in countries across the world that invite Peace Corps volunteers to come and help countries with their need for trained professionals and also to build friendships across the world. So I'm very proud to be here as a Peace Corps volunteer tonight. I'm very proud to be serving in Mongolia. As Dava mentioned, I joined Peace Corps at the age of 64. And my original thought was that this was going to be my entry into retirement. I was going to fly off into the sunset after Peace Corps. I lived and worked in a very rural, small community in Pennsylvania for many, many years. And when I came to Peace Corps, I realized how small and how insulated my world in Pennsylvania was. I had no idea that there was so much going on out in the world. And so this has been such a great education for me, such a wonderful way of opening doors to people and diversity that I really had no idea about. It has become an opportunity for me to work with students, with the community, with people of completely different worldviews than I have. So my vision is greatly expanded. And it will help me when I return home, I hope, to be a better person. So I serve right now with 60 other volunteers here in Mongolia. There are 60 of us. About 20 of us are right here in UB. The rest are spread across the country. The one thing that we all have in common is that we all teach English in public schools in Mongolia. And very, very few of us are actually trained educators. None of us really have a background in public school education. And so our first 3 months in country are spent learning how to teach, and we also learn how to speak the language. So when I started teaching, so after 3 months of training, I started teaching in public school 2024 in January of 2023. And there were things that surprised me, and I wanted to start by talking about some of the things that surprised me when I started teaching in Mongolia. Because I do have 3 children who were raised in American schools, so I do have a little bit to compare it to. One of the first things that I learned about Mongolia is, of course, the recent history of the past 30 or 35 years. In 1991, Mongolia separated from Russia with a peaceful revolution and established a democratic government and with their own constitution. But they had, for 70 years, been a communist country. And so this really shaped what their education system looked like. Since 1991, there has been a very slow and gradual move towards the Western education system. But like all change, it can be hard, and it can be painful, and it can be very slow. And that is really what I have observed with the Mongolian system, is that the change is coming, but it's coming slowly. The things that surprised me was the fact that the 12th grade well, I don't know if it surprised me, but the fact that the concept of a 12th grade education is still fairly new in this country. Education is compulsory until the 9th grade. And then students who finish the 12th grade must take a basic national exam and a general entrance exam in order to qualify to go to university. Another thing that surprised me is how young the population of Mongolia is. So 32% of the Mongolian population is actually under the age of 14. 40% are under the age of 18. So that means that a lot of the students here are very, very young, which explains why a lot of schools are overcrowded and why a lot of schools are understaffed, because there are just so many kids that need to be educated. As of 2021, there were over 350,000 students here in UB. And there are 281 schools in UB. About half of those schools are public schools. 152 public schools in UB. They are overcrowded, so overcrowded that they actually need to have 2 shifts. So half of the students go to school in the morning and half of the students go to school in the afternoon. It's not unusual to have class sizes of up to 60 kids. Most of the students in my school have class sizes of about 50. So this is actually a picture of the inside of my school. It was built in the 1960s, so it was built in the Soviet era. You can see that the steps are concrete and a little bit old and worn, like the whole school is a little bit old and worn. It's been in use for 60 years. And we have our trophy hall. And this is a typical classroom. So you can see that we do not have desks. In the Mongolian classroom, we don't have desks like we're used to in America. We're used to having desks with little drawers in them. Here, kids often sit on these small wooden chairs or actually benches. And in some classrooms, they're so crowded that they put 3 or 4 kids on a bench instead of the 2 that it's built for. So I've learned a little bit about the Soviet style of education since I've been here too. So under the Soviet era, teachers were trained and students were trained to memorize. They were given a lecture at the front of the room. They were memorizing the words. They were learning the rules. And they weren't really encouraged to ask questions. They were not encouraged to admit when they didn't know something or when they needed extra help. Today, many of the oldest teachers that I work with were actually trained to teach under the Soviet system. Here's a couple of the older teachers that I work with in my teacher's room. They actually were trained as Russian teachers when they were young, and then after 1991, they were sent back to college and actually were probably taught by Peace Corps volunteers how to be English teachers. And so they still operate under the old style of Mongolian teaching. Not that these teachers are bad teachers. They are wonderful teachers and they have come a long ways, but that is how they were trained to teach. The younger teachers that you see here sitting in the room with me, they actually were taught by these older teachers. So they also were raised in an era of being taught to memorize, being taught to sit still at their desks and not ask questions. And so now, as young teachers, they are trying to learn more Western ways of education. But as I said, change is hard. And so They are, they love to work with me and they love to have my ideas, but they also really struggle with the way that they were raised. So it's hard to work with a whole new generation of kids who were raised with the internet and have a completely different expectation about education. The Mongolian government has a goal of all of their population being proficient in English by 2050. And when Peace Corps started here in 1991, at the same year of the revolution, the silent revolution, Peace Corps volunteers were here in country and they were asked to come and help their population learn English because the Mongolian government recognized very early that it was extremely important to their own advancement and their own world relationships that their population speak English. So the first thing that Peace Corps volunteers did was they worked in the university with Russian-speaking teachers who were transitioning to become English teachers. And then you also have special needs kids who are also in the classroom. You have kids are not necessarily separated out because they have developmental problems or because they have physical problems that they need extra attention for. They're just in the classroom. And so those kids oftentimes get lost. And so the Mongolian government, I wish, would come up with a way of really addressing the special needs of all of the kids in the classroom. I'm not saying that we do that perfectly in America. We certainly do not. But we do recognize that there are different levels of ability and that those kids shouldn't be separated from the other kids, but their needs can be addressed in special ways. And so I wish that Mongolia would look at that a little bit more closely. I also would really encourage there to be more Peace Corps volunteers in the public school system, Errol. We could really use more native speakers in the public schools to really improve the kids and the teachers' confidence levels. They really, I think that the more that they practice, the more pronunciation they learn, the more they build on their skills, then the better everyone's English skills will be. And certainly having native speakers in the classrooms really automatically starts building that confidence if we're working properly in those schools. So, in conclusion, being a Peace Corps volunteer in Mongolia has been the most rewarding experience of my life. I have learned so much. I have been so touched at how excited Mongolian people are to have the opportunity to interact with Americans, with anybody from the West, but it seems like in particular with people who are native English speakers, the Mongolian people are so thrilled to have us that it's such a pleasure to be able to work with them as well. I would like to believe that I have made a difference in some people's lives that I have worked with here. And I know that they have made a huge difference in my life. And so I will be forever grateful to Mongolia, as well as proud to have been a Peace Corps volunteer here. And just to remind you that change is slow, change is painful, but change is coming. Just in the 2 years that I have been here, I have seen a lot of change. A lot of change in the city of UB, a lot of changes in the teachers that I work with and in the students that I work with. So I would just be really excited if I had the opportunity to come back in 10 years and see what has happened. Because if this much change is happening in 2 years, then it's just going to continue on, and it's just going to be an incredible place to be in 10 years. So I am, again, very proud of what I see happening in Mongolia, of the small part that I've had in it. So I'd like to open it up for discussion and questions at this point, and I don't know, I'm certainly not an expert, but I'll be glad. I also have a couple of Peace Corps volunteers in the audience with me that I can call on if I need help. Please.
This is Hyungyo from Kuika. I'm a program manager. It was really interesting to hear like difficulties that you confronted, and I wonder, how did you deal with the different expectations, and how did you align the different levels of students when you taught English?
Yeah, that's a really good question. How did I personally deal with difficulties? So luckily in Peace Corps, we are taught very important words of flexibility and resilience. And flexibility has been absolutely critical, right, Peace Corps volunteers, in our jobs. One of the things about the Mongolia school system is that things change all the time. So even you're given a schedule for the week on Monday, and by Wednesday, you're not really sure what's going to be happening that day. Classes often get canceled, other activities get added in. So dealing with the difficulties, you have to really be very flexible, and you have to be pretty much prepared for anything. How did I work with kids with different ability levels? I wish that I could say I had figured that out, but I really didn't. It's very easy for me also to really work with the bright kids who really want to talk to me and are saying, oh, Darcy, count on, call on me. It's really easy to just call on them. So one thing that I've tried to do is work with some of my teachers, and we have the class list. And so we just randomly call on people to answer questions. And sometimes that works really well, and we find out that kids understand a whole lot better than what we thought because they were being so quiet. Sometimes it doesn't work very well at all, and you really embarrass a child by calling on them and they cannot answer the question at all. So mixed results on that. One of the other things that I try to do as a Peace Corps volunteer, and I've tried to work with my teachers also, is to walk around the classroom all the time and look over students' shoulders. And when I see that they're struggling with something or they're not answering the question, then just kind of quietly talk to them about it. And, maybe you could try thinking about this, or try it this way. So I try to do it that way, but it's been a struggle. And again, 50 students in a classroom makes that really hard. So you have to really concentrate on it. It would be really nice if there were at least 2 teachers in the classroom all the time so that you could have that kind of give and take between the teachers and the students.
Could you share with us what does an average week look like for you?
An average week?
Yeah, so like how many hours you work a week, places you go, people you see.
Okay, so our required schedule is that we teach 10 hours a week. We co-teach. Peace Corps volunteers are not supposed to teach by themselves. They're supposed to always have another teacher in the room, and the teacher is actually the primary teacher, and we are co-teaching with that teacher. In reality, what I find is that in my school, the teachers want me to teach the speaking parts. They really want, the students also really like that because it gives them an opportunity to hear a native speaker and to interact with a native speaker. So we often find that that's the way that we work most easily together. So 10 hours of actual in-classroom time a week, and then another 10 or so hours of planning time. We also need to meet with the teachers that we're co-teaching with and plan a lesson, figure out what we're doing. And then we also have what we call in-school community development, which is things like teacher development hour, where we meet with all of the teachers in our department and we actually do methodology, we do small classes with them, we try to improve their skills in a group situation. We might have speaking clubs with students. A lot of students at my school are very interested in studying abroad, so they want to talk to me about things like IELTS or Flex program or improve their speaking skills so that they can go and apply to universities abroad. So I spend some time with that as well. So that's another 10 hours. So it's 30 hours in school and then 10 hours in the community. And that's how I got involved with the American Center for Mongolian Studies, is through my community development outside of school. And I also do some work at the American Corner, and I've worked for a couple of NGOs around town as well.
I have a couple of questions. So first, how do you feel that the English curriculum that you work with prepares students for an English-speaking world? Right, the kinds of skills and grammar and vocabulary that they are encountering in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And secondly, you mentioned a lot of your students are really interested in studying abroad. Mm-hmm. And are you able to see, since you've been here for a couple of years, for how many does that dream become a reality? And what might obstacles to that be?
Wow. Okay. So the Mongolian English teachers are really, really good at things like grammar. And they are really good at teaching the vocabulary. And the way that they oftentimes teach vocabulary is they have a list of words, and then they have the students translate it back and forth from English to Mongolian. Does that prepare students for the real world? Whoops. I will compare that to my own education. When I was a child, I took 10 years of French. And then I went to Quebec, and I could not communicate at all. So I seriously doubt that any school curriculum in a foreign language is really going to prepare a student for the real world. So what the students really need to do is to, if they're really committed to learning English, is they need to put themselves in situations where they have to speak English, which is why I always encourage my students to do things like go to the American Corner, join a speaking club, find other opportunities to meet native English speakers, because that's how you're really going to learn the English. You might learn a little bit of vocabulary, and that's good, because then when the native English speaker is talking to you, you're going to pick up some words. And then you can build on that. But the curriculum in the public schools, if you just go with the strict textbook, it always has a little section for reading, a little section for writing, a little section for grammar, a little section for speaking, but it's certainly not comprehensive. I would not call it comprehensive. And then in the advanced classes, they use different textbooks, which are actually, in my school, they're British textbooks. And so the advanced students learn more of the British English than they do the American English, which is fine until I come in and say, that's not the way you say it, but that's neither here nor there. But so those are going to also, though, be the students who have learned more from the internet and are spending more time on YouTube. So they're also picking up a little bit more of how to say particular things. So they're going to be more comfortable with having me in the classroom, just having conversations with them. So does that help? And then your second question was about kids who are interested in studying abroad.
Yeah, and just kind of obstacles to that, or how many are able to realize that?
Yes. So I would say that of the students I've worked with at my school, I know 3 or 4 who are now studying abroad, which isn't bad, right? Just in 2 years that I've been working in the school. And I don't know how many others went who did not have my assistance or didn't ever use me as a consultant. Students are, the obstacles, I would say, really are the tests. They really need, well, there's a lot of obstacles. There's the financial obstacles. There's the fact that scholarships are not necessarily available to students who really need it. I do know students who have been accepted to universities who've had to say no because they just didn't get the financial aid that they needed. And I know that families make huge, huge sacrifices to send their kids abroad to study if the kids are qualified. And that's another obstacle is, are you going to ask your parents to give up their retirement so that you can go to university? That's a huge thing to ask for. The other obstacles are sometimes the students think that they're better at English than they actually are. And so then they go and they try to take the IELTS test or they try to do the SAT. And then they get really discouraged when they don't do as well as they thought they were going to. So that's something else that you have to really build up a student's confidence, but really realistically, this is really what this test is, and it's really hard. And so I know Jordan and I have talked about the fact that we probably could not take IELTS and get a band 9. But students seem to think that even though they've taken just English classes, that they're going to do really well on it. So that is an obstacle as well. Thank you. Yes?
How was your expectation before coming here, and how do you feel when you think back on it?
My expectation about specifically coming to Mongolia? That's a really interesting question for me personally, because I did not ask to come to Mongolia. I told Peace Corps that I would go wherever they wanted me to serve. So when they said Mongolia, I said two things. I said, oh, Chinggis Khan and very cold. And that was my expectation coming to Mongolia. So everything that I have learned since then, I really did not expect a developed country. I was really surprised when I came to UB, and it is just a regular, modern, developed city that I would expect to find anywhere in the world. I was very surprised about that. So my expectations of Mongolia were probably outdated by at least 30 years. That said, I have been really impressed with the Mongolian people and the Mongolian culture, that on the one hand, it is a modern, developed place, but there's also the other side of, there's also really holding on to tradition and to culture, and your holidays are so important, and your way of life is something that you still want to hold on to, even though you also want to live in the city, but you still want to know that my family is out in the countryside and my children can go and visit in the summertime. So yeah, like I said, I've just been so impressed with Mongolia. It has definitely changed my worldview, and it has definitely changed my expectations of what it means to be a world citizen. Yeah. Yeah.
What's your plan when you go back to the US?
When I go back to the United States, I'm actually going back in less than a month. So I'm finishing my Peace Corps service right now. And since I have been here, I came at age 64 with 3 grown children and no other family. And now I have 3 grown children plus their spouses plus 2 babies. So I am planning to go back and spend a lot of time with my family. And we'll see what happens over the next year. I can't imagine I'm going to be content to just sit at home and be a grandmother. So I imagine that I will be working. I probably, because now I feel like I kind of know what I'm doing teaching English, I would be very interested in continuing to be a tutor for people who don't speak English. I would also be really interested in working at a library, because I have learned so much from the American Center for Mongolian Studies about libraries and about just how wonderful it is to work with books, that I think I might be interested in doing some library work as well. I probably will not travel abroad again for a very long time. At least not to live, not to live. I would love to come back to Mongolia to visit, but probably not to live again.
Just a quick question back to your work, actually. One of the things you mentioned was you try to bring the creativity and critical thinking out of teachers too.
Right.
An indicator, or how did you assess the growth of the teachers?
I'm sorry, can you say?
How did you assess the growth of teachers?
How did I assess the growth of the teachers?
You assisted in terms of the creativity and critical thinking. Because you also mentioned that you did some activities to bring that out.
So mostly my assessment was done by self-assessment. So I asked teachers, I had a little questionnaire at the beginning of the year, how comfortable do you feel with your speaking skills? How comfortable do you feel in a classroom playing bingo? How comfortable do you feel, I had a whole list. And so they rated themselves. And then at the end of the year, I had them rate themselves again. So it was certainly not a scientific study, and I don't know really, I can't say exactly how effective it was. So, but I think it was valuable in rating their confidence skills. So, if they were saying at the beginning of the year, no, I'm not comfortable at all. No, I don't use English in my classroom at all. And then by the end of the year, they were saying, well, actually now I do feel, maybe I speak in English half the time. I feel like that was a win. And if they're feeling confident enough to say that they're improving their skills, then I think that that's a good sign.
Is there any advice you'd like to give to the Peace Corps, the volunteers who are on board, just beginning their journey? Is there any advice you'd like to give them?
For beginning volunteers?
Yes. You were 2 years,
Yeah. So for volunteers who are just starting in the classroom, I'll tell you what, we have a group chat for all of the volunteers, and the new volunteers have so many questions about how do I find this resource? How do I teach this? What do you know about this particular test? And what I would really like to say to them is relax. It's going to be fine. Go back to just flexibility and resilience. You just kind of deal with things as they come up. You figure it out. One of the things that I think there's a misconception, I don't know if new volunteers feel this way or not, but I've always had this, this idea that maybe I could change the world. That maybe I could fix things. And one of the things that I have realized is the only things that I can fix are the little things that are in front of me. And that's really what you want the volunteers to realize. They are all of us have so much, we came in with so much energy and so much goodwill and so much, oh, let me try this, let me try this, let me try this. And I would never, ever discourage any of us from being that way. But we do have to learn to let go a little bit and relax. Yeah, take that back to Koika. Yes, Earl.
Darcy, you may not have changed the world, but you changed many individual worlds. So thank you for your 2 years of service. You've been incredible.
Thank you so much, Earl. Thank you. Earl is our country director who came to. Thank you.
Can I ask one last question?
Of course.
Before I go, in the Peace Corps, you have helped many students here in this country. Thank you for your helping us. We appreciate your helping here and helping our students and ushering them into the English language and giving them advice how to improve their English language in a practical way. Not just staying and sitting there, but also practically coming to this place and speaking English language for real, simply to know how it actually works in a practical way.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much.
There is also this matter. When you teach children's English, you do realize some of them learn the stuff from the internet, largely from the internet, but most of the stuff they learn from the internet is incredibly flawed. In other words, it might go like some spectrum way that they might know this part, but most of the other parts, they have no idea how to even use that or interpret it or know how to even that works. They might actually not know about how to perform a cohesive sentence, nor compositions, nor they don't even know anything about adverbs, nor other forms of grammars.
That is a really good point, yes. So learning on the internet Again, what you learn from the internet is how to repeat what you're hearing. So I go into classrooms where I'm walking down the hall and I'm hearing an awful lot of cursing. Those are the kinds of things that I'm afraid kids are learning on the internet, is things that we don't necessarily want them to learn. And they certainly are not learning grammar. They're learning how to repeat back what they've heard on the computer. So there's so much more, yes, that they need to learn. And as Peace Corps volunteers who are on the ground and talking with people one-on-one, we're able to really do more than just have them repeat back what they're hearing. Yes. Yeah. I'm not sure that they learn a false language, but they certainly don't learn how, like you said, the nuances of the language. They certainly don't learn how to have a real conversation with a real person. Earl is shaking his head, yes. No, I have not heard of those books. Do you?
Yes.
Are they very good books?
I've heard books, yes.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I don't know if I would have any advice about what the best English book is.
Lord of the Rings.
Well, the Lord of the Rings is the Harry Potter is definitely an excellent way to learn English. I would say that reading anything is better than reading nothing.
Exactly.
And the more you read, the better your English is going to be. And I really encourage my students, probably not very successfully, but I always tell them that if you want to learn English, just start reading. Start reading. Don't ever stop reading, because that is the best way to learn.
We were children who read comic books, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, there is the 2001: A Space Odyssey movie and the book. I only read the book in the first prologue chapter about Moonwatcher, but I never read the other chapters and the other text about the humans. Oh, and in the books they mention about the Earth's population, and the Earth is basically humanity is living in borrowed time. Oh, and 1/3 of the population of the world is Chinese.
Huh. All right. I don't think I've read that book. I saw the movie, but I was a child when I saw that movie, so it was a long time ago. That's an old one. All right. Yes, Jordan.
So you mentioned you spend about 30 hours a week at school, and then you mentioned that you also do community work. Can you share some of the things that you have done for your community work?
Outside of school?
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time at the American Corner. Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming. I have spent time doing speaking clubs at the American Corner. I've spent time doing reading groups, pronunciation. You're going to have to help me with this. You know better than I do what I've done.
Speaking club, reading club.
Yeah, I've helped with writing clubs. So I cannot say enough good things about the American Corner and the opportunities that they give to the citizens of Mongolia and UB in particular to come and learn English in so many different ways. So yes, there's movies here, there are reading groups here, there's speaking groups. You can learn just about anything if you want to at the American Corner. And then, of course, at the American Center for Mongolian Studies, you have all kinds of opportunities to read about the history. The library is fantastic. What is it, the largest English book? The largest English book collection about Mongolia in Mongolia. So if you want to learn about Mongolian history or just Mongolian culture, Mongolian art, then the American Center for Mongolian Studies is a fantastic place. I've met really interesting people there that come to Mongolia from America and other places to study Mongolian and to learn about this country. So, yeah. Well, then thank you all for your time tonight and your kind attention, and it's been a pleasure to speak with you.